Welcome to the 2022 Cultural Development Grant Panel meeting. I am Martine Collier, the Executive Director of the Arts Council. We also have Eileen Blake, the Communications and Strategic Initiatives Coordinator of the Arts Council, on the call today. Eileen will be serving as the scorekeeper during the proceedings. Next, I would like to introduce our panelists, all of whom are members of the Arts Council's governing board, which is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves and briefly state their affiliation or background, and we'll go in alphabetical order and start with Clay. Whoops, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. My name is Clay Hollenkamp. I am a member of the Arts Council for about 3 years now, I believe. I have worked in the arts administration realm in various capacities for the past 10 years. Also in the nonprofit world, where I'm a grant writer and database manager. Currently I work with Redlands Christian Migrant Association and sit on the Arts Council. I also sit on the board of directors of a nonprofit in Plant City called Make Plant City that seeks to build community creatively.
Great. And next we'll go to Dee Hood.
Hi, I'm Dee Hood. I'm a visual artist and faculty emerita at the Ringling College of Art.
Great. Megan Parsons.
My name is Megan Parsons. I am currently employed in the marketing department at Zoo Tampa at Lowry Park. Past experience includes executive director of the Piedmont Wind Symphony in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I also was the director of marketing communications for the Southeastern Center for Contemporary Art and the Sawtooth School for Visual Art in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I currently serve on the board of the Arts Council, and I'm co-chair of an organization in Winston-Salem, North Carolina called Carolina Music Ways.
Great. And now, Andra Richardson.
Hi, all. I'm Andra Richardson. I've always been a lover of the arts. I graduated from SCAD with a BFA in fashion marketing and management and kind of went in that direction early on in my career. In the furniture industry, doing merchandising and traveling all over the country, doing trend forecasting. And I currently work at an agency in e-commerce, kind of on two sides of the business, page search and also product page management, where a large part of my job is dedicated to copywriting. And in my pastime, writing is my art form of choice.
Great. And last, but certainly not least, Georgia Mayhew.
Thank you. I'm recently retired arts administrator. I have a background in development, also in marketing, as well as the CEO for numerous arts organizations in New York and in Florida and a little bit in London. I have served as a grant panelist, not only for the Arts Council, but for the New York State Cultural Affairs, also for the JP Morgan Chase Foundation, and also for the Division of Cultural Affairs, State of Florida.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. We are so grateful to these panelists for their investment of time and their thoughtful review of these applications. If you have ever been a grant panelist, it requires great commitment to do a good job, and we so appreciate their assistance. We are also very grateful to the Board of County Commissioners of Hillsborough County who provide the funding for the Cultural Development Grant. Now, we want to do just a few housekeeping details about the proceedings today. All panelists will remain muted except when it is their turn to speak. As was the case when this meeting was done in person, members of the audience will not have an opportunity to address the panelists directly. Panelists who have employment or derive any monetary return directly or through a family member from any applicant organization were asked to declare a conflict of interest early in this process so that they could recuse themselves from discussion of any applications where a conflict of interest was present. There were no conflicts of interest reported, so all panelists have reviewed all applications. I would now like to provide everyone with an overview of the panel procedures we will be following today and provide some context for the process. We will review applications starting with level 1 and working in ascending level order to the level 3 applications. All applications are eligible to receive up to 100 points and must receive an average of 80 points or more to be considered for funding. However, a score of 80 points does not guarantee funding. Although each panelist has reviewed and scored every application, a first reader has been assigned randomly to each application. The first reader completes a more thorough review of each application and will begin the discussion of that application. All other panelists then have an opportunity for comments and discussion. Discussion of each application should be no longer than approximately 5 to 6 minutes in length. Panelists have an opportunity following the discussion of each applicant to make changes to their score sheet. Panelists will be called upon to announce their total score beginning with the first reader at the conclusion of the discussion. If there is a change in the original score, panelists are asked to announce that the score is changed and reflect the criteria for the change score. At the end of each level, panelists have a last opportunity to revisit their scores. Once this process is completed, the scores are final. The panel's recommendations for funding based upon the scoring will be taken to the Arts Council's Board of Directors for approval. Funding under this program is based on a precise mathematical formula. The amount of any subsequent award will be based on the final score and available funding. The amount of the award will not be known until after approval by the Arts Council's Board of Directors. And now we are ready to begin the panel process. Our first applicant is Bits and Pieces Puppet Theater, and our first reader is Clay.
All right, Bits and Pieces Puppet Theater. There's a truck going by. Hold on just a moment. Bits and Pieces Puppet Theater is requesting $15,000, 12 of which will pay for the salary of the executive director, and $3,000 will pay for the salary of the artistic director. So Bits and Pieces Puppet Theater uses puppets of various sorts, including their unique 9-foot-tall puppets, to cultivate in children the growth of creative expression, arts appreciation, and age-based classroom knowledge. 80% of their programming is produced outside of their theater, and 88% is presented free. They have a good diversity of audiences. Last year, about 50% of their audiences were minority, Black or Hispanic, and this current fiscal year, it's about the same. Their organizational leadership does not have a lot of diversity, though. All right, going on to the various sections. Accessible and outward-looking philosophy. They do good outreach. They have in-person and online programming in normal times that are not subject to a pandemic. Their programs go to preschools and elementary schools to reach the community. They have an online catalog, and they use community feedback to help them respond. They used community feedback to help them respond to COVID. And they distribute feedback forms to teachers and parents to collect that feedback. Their online program is available, and it seems that schools and libraries are notified, but I wonder if they make it available to individuals as well, and how individuals would be notified. Seems they do a good job of collecting feedback, and they use it to influence their programming. There's not an explicit description of how it's used, though. So I wonder how feedback is used to determine a connection to the activities. Moving on to understanding the community, the organization divides its community of students in kindergarten through 5th grade schools and pre-K centers. by doing this, by defining their community as that in that way, it seems that reaching out to schools and libraries, they likely reach the greatest number of their particular audience members as is practically possible by performing in schools and libraries. They mentioned a few occasions of being responsive to audience and community needs. One thing I did note though is these show them being responsive, but not so much as proactive on how to increase their accessibility. They seem to do a great job of reaching their audience though, making use of all platforms, electronic and traditional, to connect. I really liked that their multimedia e-blast included coloring and activities for children. I think that's a great way to further engage children, even while reaching the parents too. Going on to the benefits for the community section. They mentioned the importance of cross-generational audiences with grandparents and grandchildren enjoying the same characters. And they state that children's stories help they state that they create advocates for the arts and children with the stories that they present. Their 2021 season will include 5 productions of 80+ performances, aiming to reach about 10,000 children aged 3 to 8. They serve all of Hillsborough County, especially Eastern Hillsborough and the I-75 corridor, many of whom are first-generation Americans. That led me to wonder if they do any shows in Spanish. But a little later on, they state that puppets make nonverbal communication possible when English is not available. So I'm assuming they don't, but still do make the effort to connect with that community that might not be English speaking. They reach economically challenged communities by doing sponsor shows and offering ticket subsidies. Going on to the partnerships and collaborations, they have strong partnerships with Hillsborough County schools, libraries, parks and rec. And I wonder if they're building any new partnerships or anticipate any, or what they're doing to create those partnerships. Staying connected to the mission. They develop content in collaboration with Hillsborough County schools and Florida state standards. They do a good job of helping keeping content relevant and related to audience needs. Creates value. They've won a lot of awards for their content. There were some sections in some of these, some questions in some of these, which maybe I'll get to this a little bit later. Some of the questions in the prompts were not really answered. And I'll talk about that in just a moment though. All right, take programmatic's risk. This was the best section of the application, in my opinion. They explained how a risk taken in 2009, the creation of the giant puppet production of Petrushka, led to a variety of opportunities that broadened their appeal of the organization internationally and at home, and allowed them to expand production. It's a great job of explaining in that section and answering all the questions. In the last 3 sections about organizational capacity, foster sound government and management, continually plan and learn, and build financial strength. The 3 of these kind of suffered from the same thing that I was mentioning a little bit ago. They didn't directly answer a lot of the prompts. Something that was an issue, I think, with a lot of the applications is not addressing the various prompts. The things, as panelists, were given a score sheet that tells us what it is that we need to look for. And the score sheet specifically says, is there evidence that the applicant responded to these various prompts? Because we don't know what all of these organizations, what every organization does, we kind of have to stick to what's on the 4 corners of the application. So if it's not there, it's hard to judge. It's only fair that we do it that way, because we might know a lot about one organization and be able to be familiar with their programming, and could potentially judge their organization based on what we know outside of the organization, but that's not fair then to those we know little about. So we kind of have to stick to what's on the application. This application was in a number of spaces, just kind of skipped over some prompts. It would have been really helpful if it would have specifically addressed each of the prompts, at least in passing. And there were a number of places where that just didn't happen. I think that probably concludes what I had to say. Let me see if there's anything in the, let me see. In the application where we can leave comments for the applicant, I noted specifically where some of those were we scanned in the section regarding organizational capacity. There's no mention about how qualified professionals are recruited. It would have been good to detail how and why the current professionals were chosen. In the section about strategic plan, there's no mention of how the plan's evaluated. In the section about financings, there's little mention of the budget. So those are the kind of things I'm talking about. So while this organization does great work, the application kind of skipped over a lot of the points that would have given evidence that the prompts were met. So that was kind of my thoughts on it. And I look forward to hearing everybody else has to think.
Other comments?
I just wanted to say that I thought they were doing an amazing job with a small staff, and also going the extra mile with the educational materials.
Other thoughts?
Yes, I loved reading about how the COVID lockdown gave them the opportunity to use some of the materials they had gathered from Guatemala to build a new show. I also agree with Clay that they were missing, some of the diversity across the board. So it would have been good to read about just how they're making an effort to improve that and recruit diverse staff members. And then lastly, I didn't get a good understanding of the goals and objectives in the strategic plan.
Anyone else? If not, then I think we are ready to score. We will start with you, Clay.
Do you want to give the score that's our average score that's on the scoring sheet you sent out?
Yes.
Okay, my score is 78.4.
Georgia?
93.4.
Dee?
100.
Megan?
56.6.
Andra?
89.6.
And Eileen, the average score?
It's overall at 83.6.
Okay. Our next applicant is Moving Current Dance Collective, and our first reader is Dee.
I unmuted. So this is a collective of choreographers, dancers, and guest artists dedicated to providing professional contemporary dance in Tampa. They produce concert series and range of educational programs for schools and organizations. Some of the highlights that I see are the inclusive classes for diverse populations. The show and tell performances require no audition, application, or admission fees. They're increasing their reach in the community with interactive shows for dual language, Spanish, English, and also for deaf and hard of hearing. Their pre-professional dance classes include students with disabilities. They have partnerships with HCC, USF School of Dance, and Hillsborough County Arts and Education. In adapting to COVID, and I found this really important in all of the grants, was how they adapted to COVID. They reinvented the New Grounds concert into a virtual form. Dancers created 15 short dances from home. The dance for films was specifically created for viewing on screen. And as an organization, they recognize that they need to be better prepared for external circumstances like COVID in the future.
Any other comments? Anyone else? I think maybe, Georgia, are you trying to speak? You're muted.
Yes, I was concerned the fact that the strategic plan had no start date or end date, and that a little bit about, so I was concerned about their planning and also about board participation.
Anyone else?
I would just say that I found that their application, the way they set it out, it was kind of like a list where each criterion was listed and addressed, was simple, but it made for a really easy application that covered all of the issues, all of the prompts.
I agree. I thought it was one of the stronger applications that I read, and I felt that they addressed all the prompts.
Anyone else? Then I think we are ready to score. So we will start with you, Dee.
100.
Megan,
Sorry, 88.6.
Andra,
97.6.
Clay,
95.2.
and Georgia.
72.2.
Okay. Eileen, what is our average score?
It's a 90.72.
Okay. Thank you. Our next applicant is New Tampa Players, and Megan is our first reader.
I'm good. I really enjoyed reading the application for New Tampa Players. I thought that they addressed all the prompts. I thought they clearly answered them and gave ample information to back those prompts up, their answers up, and really appreciated their desire to serve the community that they are in. They seem to have a good understanding of the community they serve, and their inclusion for all just I think was really important, is important during these times, and I think they are making every effort to be very inclusive.
Other thoughts? Anybody else? Well, in that case, we are ready to score. So we will start with you, Megan.
92.
Andra,
100.
Clay,
88.4.
Georgia,
97.4.
and Dee. Dee.
Sorry,
okay.
100.
Okay, very good. And our average, Eileen?
It's a 95.56.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Rudrum Dance Company, and our first reader is Andra.
All right, Rudrum Dance Company aims to preserve the historical, cultural, and religious context of classical Indian dance and bring it to audiences. I felt that on the application, most of the criteria was met, but more details on the process for recruiting a qualified and diverse professional management staff would have been helpful. Also, the organization doesn't currently have a strategic plan, but I felt like any details they could have provided on any specific current goals would have been helpful. From the application and the organization's mission, I can assume that they plan to continue bringing these types of performances to various stages, but it would have been great to know more about how they plan to form a strategic plan, improve diversity, expand reach and accessibility, etc.
Other comments?
I personally didn't think that they answered all the prompts or gave enough information. I don't think that they shared enough about challenges they've overcome. Again, they didn't have a strategic plan. I thought they had thoughtful partnerships, but I just felt like a lot of questions weren't answered.
Other comments?
I would agree with Megan. I thought they skipped a lot of the prompts or didn't give information on it. I had a long comment for them in the information that they'll see. But overall, it was a lot of it was just missed, I thought.
Anyone else? Okay, then it looks like we're ready to score. So we'll start with Andrew.
93.4.
Clay,
74.8.
Georgia,
95.6.
D. I think you're muted, D. There we go.
92.6.
Megan
50.6.
and Andra. Andra?
I went first. 93.4.
Okay. And Eileen, what is our average?
It's an 81.14.
Very good. Our next applicant is the Shruti Foundation, and Georgia is our first reader.
All right, thank you. The Shruti Foundation's mission is to present Indian classic music and to promote the heritage of Indian music and to show its interactivity with other world musics. And they do this through concerts. It's more with other organization, workshops, educational events, festivals / community events. It's accessible to all. My main concerns are the audience numbers and the education component. To me, as reading it or the way it was presented, was that it was mostly about performing and not really a lot about educating the audiences about the music and the importance of the heritage. They have no full-time staff. The Sanker, who is not only the head artist, but the head of the foundation, and he manages the foundation. So he's also participating in all these events and performing, but I don't see, a 3-person board member. I'm concerned that there's no really strategic plan. They do have a part-time manager. What they are providing to the community is really high quality music. What was missing to me were there a lot of numbers that were not filled in. And so that was a concern for me. Other than that, again, very quality product. But to me, the educational component was definitely missing.
Other thoughts?
I thought that they didn't elaborate enough about accessibility of programming, their services and facilities, and online media. I did not think that they defined the community that they serve geographically, culturally. I felt like there's a lot of information missing. And I understand that they're a very small organization, because I've worked for them. I'm on the board of a nonprofit that doesn't have a staff, but they didn't answer the questions. And I wanted more information.
Definitely. That's the same here. I felt like, you know, what is your audience? Who are your audience? Where are the educational component? Tell me more about your partnerships.
I felt the exact same. I would have learned to learn more about who exactly is showing up to their events in terms of demographics and how the organization is accommodating them specifically. And then more details on how they set standards and measure themselves against them would have been helpful, as well as more information on how they're looking to recruit board and staff members and how they would operate.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Then I think we are ready to score, starting with Georgia.
81.4.
D,
85.
Megan,
32.
Andra,
71.4.
Clay,
Sorry, trying to get my screen to cooperate here. I believe it's a 71. Can you
Yes.
tell? I think that's
that's what you reported initially. So Eileen, could you give us our average?
It's a 68.16.
Our next
Could Eileen repeat that again? She sort of broke up.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's a 68.16.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
our next applicant is Spanish Lyric Theater, and our first reader is Clay.
All right, Spanish Lyric Theater requested $15,000, 7,500 of which will go to outside artistic services, 6,000 of which to venue rent, and 1,500 to marketing. This organization produces and presents theatrical productions in Spanish and English. It's founded in 1959. The application said they were the oldest performing arts company in Tampa. They have a fairly diverse board with both gender and minorities, both genders and minorities represented. And they have a diverse audience in terms of age and also races. All right, accessibility and outward-looking philosophy. They do a great job of responding to all prompts in this section. The programming, services, and facilities are all accessible. They do a good job of online media and marketing. The website's available in English and Spanish, and they make it available to visual and hearing impaired people as well. They do a good job of online marketing and make a great use of feedback. Understanding the community. Very good job of using data to define their community. Thought that was really good, kind of to use a scientific way of doing it. A great job of marketing, I was especially impressed with their use of voter records to reach specific demographics. In the benefits of the community, they're the only bilingual theater company in Tampa. According to the application, they create a space for Spanish language opera and singers, which is obviously not a terribly large community. Specifically, they state their economic impact at 153,889, and they create 6 full-time equivalent jobs. I thought it was nice that they were so specific about that. They have several good ways to reach the broader community, including educational opportunities outside of their normal spaces like dance classes, youth workshops, and master classes. And they participate in advocacy work. They have several important partnerships. Staying connected to the mission, their programming aligns with the mission, and they do a good job of describing their process, and that process involves a broad spectrum of their community and even includes comments from social media. They do a good job with programmatic risks. The description of the Brooklyn production, they did a good job of describing the pros and cons and what they learned from the production. So it suggested they had a really good understanding of the value and risks of such a production. Foster sound management. They have a talented and qualified volunteer staff. And again, the section addresses all prompts, continually plan and learn. They state that they need to update their strategic plan, and they describe in detail how they'll make that happen, which I thought was great. They're planning on using an outside facilitator, suggesting they're serious about doing it right. The organization's in good shape financially, and they make smart decisions to reduce costs, such as with their storage space, as they described. And they already have a plan to increase fundraising. So they're not only kind of existing right now, but they're trying to get back to what they would have been before the pandemic, which hurt all organizations. Overall, I thought it was a great application. They reached all of the criteria directly, if not directly, then at least direct enough so that we could tell that it was addressed. And yeah, it was a good organization or application.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
One of the notes I made was about engaging the board and providing financial support. I think it's important that an organization's board is not only giving of their time, but giving of their dollars as well, whether it's $10 or, $1,000. I think it's important for nonprofit boards to have to strive for 100% participation in terms of fundraising. And it doesn't sound like their board gives at 100%.
Anyone else? If not, then we are ready to score. So Clay,
I gave it a 98.
Georgia,
Okay, already 96.
Dee,
94.6.
Megan,
70.
Andra,
100.
and our average, Eileen.
It's a 91.72.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Tempest Projects, and our first reader is Dee.
So Tempest Projects nurtures local, national, and international artists at all levels. They operate primarily as an exhibition space, but also facilitate lectures, workshops, and residencies. Overall, I think the organization has established themselves as a valuable asset to the arts community. They continue to bring us exciting contemporary art, and they've been a strong advocate for the arts and artists in the area. Among other partnerships, they've been working with the Art Space Tampa initiative to bring affordable living and workspace to local artists. This program has been successful around the country and would greatly benefit the Tampa Bay community. They also provide a residency program which benefits local artists through the exchange of ideas. During the pandemic, they organized 7 virtual exhibitions, and I see they've added an online market to their website as another avenue of fundraising and also support for artists.
Okay. Anyone else?
I thought this was a great application. Every prompt was answered in a thoughtful and thorough manner. I especially liked reading about the both the art space, the programmatic risk section, which included information about the art space and also about their reaching out to this new space. And I don't even know how you describe the whole Crab Devil / Peninsularium project, but all of that I thought was interesting.
I agree with Clay. I thought it was, I thought they had great answers to the prompts, and I thought it was well done.
Anyone else? All right, we're ready to score. We'll start with you, Dee.
100.
Megan,
86.8.
Andra,
98.
Clay,
100.
Georgia,
96.
and our average, Eileen?
It comes out to a 96.16.
Okay, our next level 1 organization, and this is the last level 1 organization, is the Gay Men's Chorus of Tampa Bay. And Megan is our first reader.
So the Gay Men's Chorus of Tampa Bay, they change lives one song at a time, where they celebrate the inherent dignity of all people through excellence in men's choral music. Let's see my notes here. I think it's great that they perform a variety of music genres and different languages to reach the communities they serve. I wanted them to elaborate on how they plan to improve accessibility. I thought they could have also explained more about educational and economic relevance. And I think overall that I didn't get full answers or feel like all the prompts weren't answered fully. And I think that was a missed opportunity for them.
Other thoughts?
I'd agree with Megan in a lot of places. They could have added some detail. It was a solid application that could have been great with a bit more detail in the first few sections. And yeah, it was. There were a few things that I was unsure if it was a mistake or some, like, for example, the attendance in the past fiscal year says 24,307, but only 348 in Hillsborough County. I'm wondering if one of those was a typo. Would have liked some explanation about that. So I think that the final 3 sections were very well done. All the prompts were met, but the first few sections could have had some more detail.
Other thoughts? All right, then we're ready to score. We'll start with Megan.
47.
Andra,
98.
Clay,
80.
Georgia,
93.2.
D,
100.
our average, Eileen.
Comes out to an 83.64.
Okay, so that concludes our level 1 organizations. I'm going to ask Eileen to go through the list, starting with the first review, give the organization and their average score. At the end of that, if any panelists would like to change a score that they made for any of the level 1 applicants, this is your final opportunity to do so. So if you'll read the list for us, Eileen.
Okay, yeah, so it is Bits and Pieces with an 83.6. Moving Current Dance Collective is a 90.72. New Tampa Players is a 95.56. Rudrum Dance Company is 81.14. Shruti Foundation is 68.16. Spanish Lyric Theater is 91.72. Tempest Projects has 96.16, and the Gay Men's Chorus of Tampa Bay is 83.64.
Do any panelists, in light of the discussion that we've all engaged in, wish to change any of their scores? So level 1 is now final. Before we move into level 2, I'd like to ask our panelists, does anyone need a break, or are you ready to keep on going?
I'm ready to keep going.
Okay. Let's start then. Our first organization, level 2, is Carolwood Players, and Andra is our first reader.
Great. Carolwood Players is a community theater that has served Hillsborough for 40 years, and they make theater accessible with their Theater for All free ticket program. I thought the organization clearly explained how their initiatives tie back to their mission. Also, they did a great job. They've done a great job of making theater accessible to the community and forming community partnerships. They provided a great example of taking risk as they discussed their collaboration with Lance Markeith Felton to present an online performance, which led to Lance returning to play Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in their production of The Mountaintop. I also appreciated seeing the student letters that were included with the implication. It kind of amplified that piece about them making connections with the community. I did take off some points for the lack of diversity across the board and staff, though I did appreciate that they recognized that and they're making some efforts to improve it. And then lastly, I felt that they did mention that they were collecting some type of feedback, but I felt like some more in-depth information on that piece would have been helpful, especially if they could have included something like examples of their survey data, or what type of questions they're including. That would have been great.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to say that I was impressed with their commitment to social equity overall.
Other
I second
thoughts?
I agree with that comment.
I thought it was a great application, and everything was addressed, and the evidence provided showed the criteria were met. The only thing I would have liked to have seen was if they would have given more information about their process for recruiting, management, and leadership. They were up against a character count in that section. I think they were at like 1,900 and something when they ran out of space. So that could have something to do with it. But other than that, I thought it was a great application.
Anyone else? Okay, we're ready to score. We'll start with Andra.
88.4.
Clay,
98.8.
Georgia,
96.
Dee,
100.
Megan,
87.4.
and Eileen. Our average for Carrollwood players.
Comes out to 94.12.
All right, our next applicant is Flora Metza, and our first reader is Georgia.
Okay, thank you. All right, Flora Mezzo, also known as the Tampa Metropolitan Youth Orchestra, is requesting $20,000. It is a community-based youth orchestra within Hillsborough County. However, their young musicians represent 80 schools from not only Hillsborough County, but 4 other counties. It's a very diverse youth background, and they all have one thing in common, is a love for music. The mission is to provide superior music training while guiding students toward lifelong appreciation of classical music. They are actually starting on June 1st, their 11th year. What I love about the application is their partnerships, and it provides opportunities for developing talent. And they are not only developing future performers, but also patrons for tomorrow. One of the favorite things I really liked too was in their support material. They had a strong list and letters from graduating seniors noting the impact of participating in this youth orchestra. I'm also was impressed with their partnerships, Arts for Florida. And when they put in Charlie's story, hey, if you didn't bring a tear to your eyes when you read Charlie's story, it would definitely, if you'd seen it in person. They also partner with the Florida Orchestra, the Plant Museum, and they clearly outlined and defined their education programs. In the new season, what I really was impressed with, that not only are they participating with their partners and doing classical music, but they're also including a music composing component for new music. And I thought that was very impressive. So, yeah.
Other thoughts? Anybody else? Well, Georgia, you must have summed it up all great for everyone. So-
All right. Like right now, I'm looking for my score right now. It's like, oh my God, where is it? It's I gave him a 98.
Okay. Dee,
100,
Megan,
82.4.
Andra,
100.
and Clay.
93.
Eileen, our average.
It came out to a 94.68.
Okay, our next applicant is Power Stories Theater of Tampa Bay, and Clay is our first reader.
Right, let me get to it. Give me just a moment. All right, Power Stories Theater is requesting, not muted, okay, is requested $20,000, $10,000 of which will go to outside artistic services, $5,000 of which to a director's operation, and $5,000 to rent. Power Stories produces true and historic themed plays, festivals, and online events of social importance. They're a professional non-equity theater. They're 20 years old, and 20% of their ticket sales go to the nonprofit community. They have had an increase in attendance in the current fiscal year of nearly 100%. I assume that's because of the online offerings now. And they have quite a diverse board and audience. In the outward looking philosophy section, I thought they did a great job of responding to the pandemic by buying the new camera equipment and really making a commitment to their online programming. I wondered what their online offerings look like pre-pandemic. But they were able to reach out to new communities, such as doing a play in American Sign Language and partnering with the Outcast Theater Company. And they're still creating new programming, such as the open mic night and various new themes for programming. In the Understanding Community section, they define community as the marginalized populations of Hillsborough, such as migrant communities and at-risk groups. They do a fantastic job of responding to audience needs by going online with programming, developing new programming, such as the Voices of Truth Theater Festival, while continuing to serve their traditional audiences. They did a good job of responding to the social issues that have gained prominence in 2020, such as Black Lives Matter, women's political power, and the value of the arts. In the benefit to community section, they very specifically answered the prompts, which I thought was very helpful. They offer socially and educationally relevant content through festivals, main stage productions, online content, and the open mic, in-house, and virtual programs. And they have programs for middle school girls. They're a part of the larger community by addressing a wide variety of topics. Their partnerships were strong. They had partnerships with a couple of different organizations. They do a good job of staying connected to the mission. They give a detailed description of how they created content aligned with their mission. I would have liked to see a little bit more in this section about how they use feedback. Creating value, they set standards of quality by identifying values and discussing them with the board and staff, and they do a good job of describing their recruitment, focusing on diversity and other values. The taking programmatic risks section was great. The Voices of Truth Theater Festival is a great example of a risk. They spent significant funds through equipment, new hires, and a new platform, and the festival was a success. They do a good job of describing the lessons they've learned and the result of the risk that they took. The Foster Sound Government Management section, they have a diverse board and are specifically striving for more diversity. They describe this all very well, including the challenges that they face. They have a strategic plan and they recognize they need to update it, but they have strong data collection methods. they're in a good financial situation, according to the application, despite a tough year and some funders pulling out. And they hope to, obviously, like everyone else, hopes to return to a stronger position going forward. Overall, I thought it was a good application, and look forward to hearing everyone else's comments.
Other thoughts?
I would have been interested to learn about how they train and evaluate their management and staff. Thought that part was missing. I also thought that they could elaborate on the community that they serve.
Anyone else? Okay, then it appears we're ready to score, starting with Clay.
Give it a 97.
Georgia?
98.
Dee?
100.
Megan?
75.6.
And Andra?
100.
Can you give us our average, Eileen?
Yes, it came out to a 94.12.
All right, our next applicant is the Tampa City Ballet, and our first reader is Dee.
Tampa City Ballet is a nonprofit organization providing excellence in dance through performance, education, and outreach. I thought some of their strengths and value to community was providing free and reduced cost performances for primary schools, USF, Ybor Square, YMCA, and senior assisted living facilities. They have a partnership with New Tampa Players to combine theater and dance, and they're also exploring partnerships with Tempest and the Cuban Club. In response to COVID, they produced a powerful short dance film, 102 Degrees, about the impact of the Spanish flu on cigar workers in Ybor during the 1918 pandemic. It's certainly keeping with their mission to create socially relevant and thought-provoking work. They also designed outdoor performance areas and invited guest teachers, one from Canada and Germany, to give instruction via Zoom.
Anyone else? Okay, then I think we're ready to score. Dee?
100.
Megan?
80.6.
Andra?
94.8.
Clay?
80.4.
And Georgia?
86.2.
And our average, Eileen?
It comes out to an 88.4.
Very good. Our next applicant is the Master Chorale of Tampa Bay, and Megan is our first reader.
Master Chorale is committed to advancing the art of choral music by performing great works of past, commissioning and performing new literature, and sharing the joy and power of choral music with new and exciting audiences and singers. My notes were, I thought that they needed to elaborate more on defining the community that they serve, as well as I thought they defined their marketing strategies well. Loved the detail of the economic impact in their education outreach and advocacy. I thought they had really great meaningful partnerships throughout the community. And it sounds like they have a creative and ambitious 43rd season planned. And I thought that they were very thorough and clear on their financial strength and strategic plan.
Great. Other thoughts?
I agree. More insights into the community that they serve beyond geographic information would have been helpful. as well as some information about their artistic or cultural quality standards and how they measure themselves against them.
Anyone else?
Thought it was a good application. I agree with Andrea about the community served. The geographic info would have been great to supplement that with about who the people are rather than just where they live. In the benefit to community section, the applicant gives a lot of info about generally people involved in choral music and what they do for a community. Would have liked to have heard more specifically about the benefit of the Master Chorale of Tampa, though. Otherwise, the application is well done, especially the last three sections: found sound government, plan and learn, and financial.
Anyone else? Okay, I think we're ready to score. We'll start with Megan.
88.6.
Andra,
96.
Clay,
91.
Georgia,
96.6.
D,
100.
and our average, Eileen.
It comes out to a 94.44.
Okay, and our last applicant in section 2 is the Ybor City Museum Society, and Andra is our first reader.
All right, the Ybor City Museum Society is the primary interpreter and conservator of Ybor City's rich history and heritage. They provide educational experiences about the people and events that brought immigrant groups together. I thought their application sufficiently addressed all of the prompts. I really didn't see any gaps within it. I thought their diversity was good, risk, financials, and also their partnerships.
Anyone else?
I thought it was one of the stronger applications. I thought it was well done.
I agree with Megan and with Andra. My one thought that I had, I think the only thought that I had that was negative would be under the benefits to the community heading. I would have liked to have seen more about outreach efforts, like other than marketing. Do you connect with the community members that did not come through your doors? Other than that, really good application.
Anybody else? Very good. We'll go to the scoring. Andra,
100.
Clay,
98.
Georgia,
92.
D,
100.
and Megan.
89.8.
And our average, Eileen?
It comes out to a 95.96.
All right, we're at the end of level 2 organization. So we're going to do what we did before. Eileen, if you'll read the name of the organization, the average score, and after that, anyone that would like to change a score will have an opportunity.
Okay, yeah. So we have Carrollwood Players with a 94.12. Flora Mezzo or the Tampa Metropolitan Youth Orchestra has a 94.68. Power Stories Theater has a 94.12. Tampa City Ballet has an 88.4. The Master Chorale of Tampa Bay has a 94.44, and the Ybor City Museum is a 95.96.
Do any panelists wish to change their score for any level 2 applicants? Seeing that no one does, my next question would be, do we need a break? We have 5 applications in level 3. Do we want a break or pursue?
I'm ready to go on if everyone else is.
Okay. Anybody, any dissent? Okay, then we'll start on level 3. And our first application there is the Florida Museum of Photographic Arts. And Georgia is our first reader.
Okay, thank you. They're requesting the 25 grand. Their mission of the Florida Museum of Photographic Arts is to collect and preserve and exhibit historic and contemporary works by nationally and internationally known photographic artists. They also enrich the community by operating outreach programs to educate children and adults. They are dedicated to important photo art, which is central to contemporary life and culture. Their educational opportunities range from fine art photography to using the use of mobile cameras on your phone. And one of the things that I didn't realize until I read it is that the Florida Photographic Museum is only one of 10 photo museums in the US that are dedicated entirely to photography. The museum is accessible to all. They provide literacy through photography to at-risk communities and they came up with a lot of creative programming during the time of COVID. Their fiscal management is strong, or appears to be strong. They are on a calendar year, their budget. They already have internships in place, so they do take advantage of giving those opportunities to interns who are interested either in arts administration or photography, and they have a strategic plan in place. My one concern was, why did they not include in their budget area, why was there no fund balance, like a fund balance brought forward where other organizations did? So I was a little kind of confused as to why they didn't include that when they were doing their budget numbers. And so that was just a question. I don't know if anybody else noted that, but those are my thoughts.
Anyone else?
I think it's important that organizations describe their accessibility in terms of the programming that they offer, not just the physical accessibility. I had hoped to see that in this application, and I didn't see that. I thought that they could have elaborated more on some of their programmatic risks. And how they measure themselves against artistic or cultural quality standards.
Other thoughts? Okay, then it looks like we're ready to score. We will start with Georgia.
96.
D.
100.
Megan.
72.
Andra.
100.
And Clay.
82.2.
Eileen, can you give us our average, please?
Yes, it's a 90.04.
Thank you. Our next application is the Philippine Cultural Foundation, and our first reader is Clay.
All right, the Philippine Cultural Foundation. Philippine Cultural Foundation, the request was 25,000, all of which will fund the, I believe it was the assistant cultural director's salary. Their mission is to present and preserve Philippine heritage and culture through multidisciplinary work. This organization is a little bit different from a lot of those that we're considering, in that they act as an umbrella organization for 18 different Filipino organizations in the area. They have a huge board, 48 people. It's almost evenly split between men and women, and 40 of 48 are of Asian descent. In the outward-looking philosophy, accessibility and outward-looking philosophy section, the biggest projects that they do involve music, dance, art, and theater. They offer classes. They also support festivals, shows, and concerts, and offer outreach to assisted living, private, and government offices, and intercultural events. They have many different types of programs at their location, and they connect to the public online through website and various social media. They do not mention how feedback is collected or used at all in that section. Understanding community, they have a broad reach, including the 44,648, according to the application, Filipino Americans in Tampa. They're the only Philippine cultural enrichment complex, I guess that means their space, in the Southeast. They really do a good job of just defining the community and understanding how to reach them. They have very broad marketing plans. Benefits to the community, they show a lot of benefit to the community by expanding educational opportunities about language, culture, and history of the Philippines. They use their space to present arts and music and theater. I would have liked to, and this was true on a number of applications, so I should bring it up at some point anyway. The Americans for the Arts calculator that describes economic impact is something that's really helpful. A lot of organizations didn't include it, so I certainly didn't take off anything for not having it, but that's something I feel like we should just all include in our applications. It is kind of, I don't want to say standard in arts or cultural organization applications, but it is something that could be really helpful. So I hope a lot of people will take note of that. They have good partnerships in the Asian community. I wondered if they were to address different groups within that community. I understand that this organization is going to be most of interest to people within the Filipino, Southeast Asian community. So partnerships outside of that might happen less often, but I wonder what kind of partnerships, and this goes also, I guess, towards board and staff, what kind of efforts do they make to recruit diversity within that community, such as differently abled people who are in the Filipino or Asian community, or the LGBT community in the Filipino or Asian community. Staying connected to the mission, they do a good job of staying aligned with their mission, and use a variety of voices to make decisions, such as public opinion, clients, artists, and audience, and board members. Their cultural committee sets standards in cooperation with publicity and communication committees. They have a strong qualified staff, but I would have liked to have heard more about the recruitment of their staff, which was not addressed. The takes programmatic risks section, they kind of didn't answer this question with they didn't give it an answer. I almost got the impression they were suggesting that existing at all is a programmatic risk. I think a lot of organizations who said this was something we did and this was why it was risky and this is what we learned from it, was the best way to answer that question. And they didn't really do that with this one here, with this response. Foster sound management explains the recruitment process well. Similar to what I said a minute ago, I get that the recruitment must be difficult because of the specific cultural aim of the organization, but what diversity within the community how do they address diversity within the Filipino community or within the South Asian community? Financial section, they mentioned financial difficulties, which is understandable given the events of 2020, but they don't describe any plans to return to normal, to get back to where they were pre-2020 beyond returning to past programming. I wonder if that will be enough to get them back. Like this year in 2020, revenue was 50% of the previous year. So if they're going to return to the same programming, how are they going to bring that 50% back? Unless past programming just like blows up this year, I don't see how they'll get back to pre-2020 levels without adding new programming or finding new fundraising plans or something along those lines. I also, in noting their operating balance, despite having a tough 2020, their operating balance fund went up after such a tough year. And after they mentioned that being difficult, I would have liked to have seen an explanation of why their operating fund balance went up in the additional operating budget info space. They don't seem to have a formal strategic plan. And I wonder if they have any plans to make a formal plan. So overall, I think this is a great application or a great organization that does a lot of good for the community that they serve. I think the application was missing, did not address a number of the prompts and was a little bit confusing in some places.
Other thoughts?
I agree with Clay. I think that maybe they didn't understand the question about programmatic risks. I think it was they interpreted it as a different question. And therefore it wasn't really answered, in my opinion. I wish that they would have shared how they train and evaluate their personnel or board members. And then I felt like they didn't share how their programming was responsive and accessible and accountable. So I agree that there were some areas where they could have shared more.
Anyone else?
Yes, I'd like to stress that it's so important to have someone else other than the person completing the application to review it, because the board ethnicities numbers did not add up to the number of board members that they had stated earlier. And just like the other things that you all, that Clay and Megan said, that if someone had reviewed that, maybe they would have put up some question marks or some little flags and say, we need to rethink this. So for all organizations out there and listening, check your numbers, check your narratives.
I feel the same as everyone else. I thought they did a great job of explaining who they are and what they do. But especially with the programmatic risk section, I just felt like there wasn't a strong example of how they achieved that and how they're producing innovative work.
Anyone else? Then I think we're ready to score. We'll start with Clay.
71.
Georgia.
91.2.
Dee.
96.6.
Megan.
40.6.
Andra.
96.
And our average, Eileen.
It comes out to a 79.2.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Stageworks Theater. And Dee is our first reader.
Stageworks has been bringing intellectual and emotionally challenging, socially relevant theater arts education to the area since 1983. The main stage season showcases classic and new works. These productions represent diverse cultures. Their outreach program impacts thousands of at-risk and underserved youth. New plays by local and national artists is an incubator for local talent and encourages them to remain in the area. In keeping with their mission, they are working with prevention, diversion, and delinquency programs. These programs help young people channel anger and frustration and help them connect to a sense of community. The drumming and drama workshops help youth with depression and anxiety. Bilingual initiative is woven through artistic and educational programs. They have numerous partnerships throughout the area. In response to COVID, they provided virtual content on YouTube and other social media sites. Examples: Stageworks Storytime, Wellness Wednesday, monthly play reading club, etc. They're working on an endowment plan as part of their strategic plan for the next 5 years.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, then we should be ready to score. We'll start with you, Dee.
100.
Megan.
87.6.
Andra.
100.
Clay.
93.2.
And Georgia.
98.6.
And Eileen, if you will give us the average.
It's a 95.88.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Tampa Theater, and our first reader is Megan.
The Tampa Theater is a catapult for the imagination since 1926. It is a protected historic landmark and one of America's best preserved examples of grand movie palace architecture. Its mission is building community through extraordinary entertainment and in an iconic landmark. I learned lots of information about them while reading the application, which was, it's great to know that they've got one of the original existing organs. So very few of those exist in the United States. That was kind of neat to read about. Let me see my notes, here we go. They offer so many events throughout the year that, and those events are very broad in range, which attracts different folks from different communities of different age populations, and the fact that they offer free and paid experiences I thought was great. They understand the community that they serve. They shared their economic, social, and educational impact. I thought they, I think that they have meaningful partnerships. They don't have a very racially or culturally diverse staff or board. And that was one of the areas of improvement I could see for them.
Other thoughts?
Yes. I would have liked to have seen more diversity in the organization, i.e. the staff, board, and creatives. The volunteers' ethnicities weren't even noted. In the narrative, though, I was very pleased to see that they are aware of this and they're committed to improving diversity on their board and on their staff. There happens to be some errors in the narrative regarding summer camp partnership. My question was, is this partnership with the University of Florida or the University of South Florida? Once again, someone didn't review it before they submitted it. Is the membership, there's two different membership numbers in the application. Is the membership over 2,000 or is it 1,425? Question. Again, review the app. I would have liked to see arts advocacy participation on the state and national level, not just on the local level. They may participate on the national and state, which I suspect they do, but they didn't put it in their narratives.
Any other thoughts? Then I think we're ready to score. Let's start with Megan.
86.4.
Andra,
100.
Clay,
98.6.
Georgia,
87.6.
Dee,
100.
and our average, Eileen.
It comes out to 94.52.
Okay, our next applicant and the final applicant and level 3 that we and in our review for today is WEDU PBS, and our first reader is Andra.
Okay, WEDU PBS reaches 16 counties in West Central Florida through media platforms, including on-air and online experiences. They offer educational and enlightening content. Overall, I thought the grant application was great. This was another one where I couldn't really find any gaps. I thought they addressed everything sufficiently. It was clear to understand how their work achieves their mission and how their programming has impacted the community and touched people regardless of their background.
Other thoughts?
I thought it was a good application. There were 2 questions I had. One in the understanding community section, similar to another organization, they talked mostly about the geography of their viewership and didn't include anything about like gender or cultural information or anything like that. That would have been helpful. Also, I was interested in, they mentioned at one point their diversity, that they are subject to the diversity policies of PBS and the FCC. And I would have liked to learn a little bit more about that and how that affects their recruiting of a qualified and diverse staff. Other than that, good application.
Anyone else? Okay, we're ready to score. We'll start with Andra.
100.
Clay,
96.
Georgia,
98.
Dee,
100.
Megan,
98.
and our average, Eileen.
It comes out to a 98.4.
Okay, as we did with level 1, level 2, we're going to have Eileen read out the 5 organizations in level 3 and the average score of each.
Okay, so we have Florida Museum of Photographic Arts with a 90.04. The Philippine Cultural Foundation has a 79.2. Stageworks Theater has a 95.88. Tampa Theater has a 94.52, and WEDU has a 98.4.
So in light of this, do any panelists want to change any of their scores? In that case, level 3 is also finalized. Well, thank you all. You did a wonderful and very efficient job. And we are all in debt to you for your time and efforts in serving as panelists. For those that are watching, the Arts Council Board is scheduled to vote on organizational grants in late July. You should be notified sometime in August. We do have another grant opening up next Monday, which is our Community Arts Impact Grant. This is not just for cultural organizations, but for any nonprofit doing projects of a cultural nature. It's project funding, unlike cultural development. But if you're interested, please go onto our website. We're doing a training for that grant on this Friday, and contact us if you would like more information. Again, we have a great board at the Arts Council, and we appreciate 5 of them today serving as our panelists. Thank you so much. And this has been taped, so we will have a tape available if you want to review this or share it with someone that was not able to attend today. Thank you all again. We appreciate it, and we're going to sign off. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.